Our guest today is Governor John Kasich. Governor Kasich's written a great new book. It's called Heaven Help Us. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Monsignor Jim Lisante, and Governor John Kasich joins me now. Governor Kasich served as the 69th governor of Ohio and ran for president during the 2016 primary. Today, he runs the Kasich Company and serves as a political analyst for NBC, CNBC, and MSNBC. Governor Kasich is the author of 4 New York Times bestsellers: Courage is Contagious, Stand for Something, Every Other Monday, Two Paths, and It's Up to Us. His latest book is called Heaven Help Us: How Faith Communities Inspire Hope, Strengthen Neighborhoods, and Build the Future. The book demonstrates how faith institutions make the world a better place and unite communities across political and religious divides. Governor John Kasich is married to his wife, Karen, and is the proud father of adult twin daughters. He's here with us today to talk about his life, his family, his faith and values, and how faith institutions can make extraordinary impacts. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, Governor John Kasich. We're here with Governor John Kasich on Personally Speaking. We're going to talk about his book, Heaven Help Us, in just a moment. But Governor, I was going through my wall collection and I found this terrific picture of you and me and Rick Lazio. So I'm presuming this was probably during his 2000 campaign against Hillary Clinton. You were doing some fundraising for Rick. 2 wonderful, wonderful congressmen working together back in the day when everybody worked together.
Look how good you looked. God darn. No wonder why you got elevated. Huh? It looks so good.
That was good. And then, as I mentioned, we met years ago and had dinner with our friend Congressman Ray McGrath. But I love the book. And, I'm thinking Heaven Help Us, even as a title, is great. It reminds me of Pope John the 23rd, when he would always say, pray as if everything depended on God, but work as if everything depended on you. And you're saying, the faith is real and it's genuine, it's beautiful, but it needs to be made real and actualized by people, very often in small communities, churches, synagogues, mosques, and all the rest of it. It's a great book. It also reminded me a little bit of the writings of St. Therese, the Little Flower, the doing small things with great benefit. While Mother Teresa would say, it's not important to do the extraordinary, but the ordinary with great love. That's what you've done, and that's what the book Heaven Help Us is about.
That's a good, yeah, maybe you should have written it.
No, you wrote a great book.
But here's the thing, Monsignor, that it's really interesting, and that is, I have always been torn by how much does the future depend on me and how much of it depends on God. And in any of my endeavors or undertakings for anybody, right, we say, okay, well, like I was yesterday talking to a woman, and she I went swimming yesterday, which I hate. Pray for me when I swim. And she was like in the lane next to me, and she said, well, do you have people talk to you about the state budget? And I said, no. She goes, well, you're lucky. I said, well, why do you care about the state budget? She said, well, I'm running this program that takes homeless kids and helps to integrate them. And I said, well, how do you think it's going? She said, it's been going great. I said, how about now? She goes, well, I have to depend on God. And I heard that. I swam another lap and I came back and I said, no, I think you have to do your part and let God figure out what he wants. But you're not going to be hanging out here and having him just come down and hand you stuff. I mean, he could, but unlikely. You need to work as hard as you can and let God take care of the rest of it. And I think that's sort of ended my uncertainty about what my responsibility is and what's his responsibility. So in this book, of course, it's people who, for one reason or another, took on responsibility, and it was through the institutions of faith that they had support. Because if you're all alone trying to create a miracle, you can do it. But if you're around a bunch of other people and you have the support of an institution like the church, a synagogue, or a mosque, you're not lonely and you can get a group and they can see what you're doing. So it's psychologically important.
Governor, let me ask you, it is important that we ordinary people in ordinary situations like our parish do great things, but it would seem to me you actually are an embodiment of the example of some people are called on to do the extraordinary. For those who are listening or watching, Governor Kasich, before he was governor of Ohio and before he was running for president, was a long-term congressman from Ohio, where he did amazing things in Congress, including, and this seems outrageous now, balancing the budget and having a surplus in government, which is just unheard of now. So you needed to be a leader in government in order for good things to happen for us ordinary people. So do you see the benefit of both? In our parish, we'll do the ordinary with great love and dedication and make good things happen locally, but we also need guys like you up top.
Well, I think it seems to me intuitively, Monsignor, that when we compare somebody's big compared to somebody's little, I don't know if God would look at it that
Right,
way.
right, right.
I mean, I really don't think to whom much is given, much is expected.
Mm-hmm.
And don't take your talents and bury them in the ground. Everybody has different talents and a different purpose. So it seems to me that, I happened to be in Congress, but was the lady who was visiting somebody in a hospital or whatever, and providing some relief to somebody in that hospital, was what she was doing, was that less important than what I was doing? I don't think so. But we have a really weird view of our value system. Thank goodness that we have a biblical value system that I think should keep us connected. And if we think we're doing big things, then we think we're big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, and you never know, God can call on anybody. I grew up as an altar boy, and those ladies that took care of the altar and the church and all that, they had such faith. I mean, I think they're doing quite well in the life yet to come. I hope they'll keep me in mind,
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I'm saying,
I
though?
do.
I think
I do.
it's just, but we do need leaders, right? I think that's clear in the scriptures too. We need quality leaders, of which we don't see a whole lot of today in anything.
You're absolutely right. I'm looking at my own parish. We're about 3,500
That's
families.
pretty good.
It's a great parish, but you're right. Without those women who do most of the volunteer work, and men too, but especially the women, there'd be no church here. I need to ask you this because you're able to do what you're able to do, whether it was in elective office or now in the writing of the book. Heaven help us, by having support systems of your own. And I'm always interested in the kind of main supports you have. So could you tell us, going back in your mind's eye, the people who raised you, Anne and John, your mom and dad, what did they do right in raising you that helped to make you the man that you are?
I think that my mother was very, Monsignor, she was very outspoken and she was willing to just say what was on her mind. And that was that good ethnic Croatian kind of thing. And she was never intimidated by anybody who had power or whatever. She was, so that was really useful. My father, I'll tell you one little story. When I was 11 years old, I think, I wanted to play Little League Baseball more than anything in the world. And all my buddies were getting on teams, but their fathers were the managers or the coaches or whatever. And I was just a little runt. And we'd run out in the field, and if we performed, then they write our name down and then call us. I never got called to be on a team. And I said to my father, I said, Dad, I think I need you to talk to somebody to get me on a baseball team. He said, Johnny, you're going to have to earn it, because if I did that, I would owe somebody else, and I don't want to owe anybody else anything. And that was really important too, when I think about it, because, I've never played politics, or rarely played politics, where I thought I needed to bend my knee to somebody in order to get something. So, I mean, I think those two things were really good. But, Monsignor, my life changed when my parents were struck down by a drunk driver. It's in, that it was in the book. And it put me on a real search to have a relationship with God. And I must say, it's interesting. The summer is not really good for worship.
Mm.
because we're so darn busy and we're just having, we're at the pool, we're exercising, we're going to work, and then by the time we know we get home, we have dinner, and it's night. At that point, it's nighttime, but nighttime comes later. We might want to put on the TV, see who's winning the basketball game or whatever. And I'm finding it's harder. In the winter where it gets dark early, we don't have a lot to do. And so isn't that interesting? I don't know if everybody feels that way, but I find myself these days kind of slipping a little bit, and I need to get back. I need to get back to the garden a little bit.
One of our guests a while back was Derek Jeter, and of course, every mother and father wants their
Oh,
kids to
what
be
a
Derek
guy.
Jeter. He's amazing. But these kids are not very often getting to church, and the parents will say to me, "Well, on Sundays we got practice." And I said, "Look, with all due respect, it's unlikely that your kid is going to end up as Derek Jeter. Sports will be for a time and then gone. But God, hopefully, is part of the whole life journey. So make the time. Give us an hour every week." I want to ask you this too, because we just talked
And
about.
it's not just an hour. What I try to tell people, advise people, suggest to people, it's an ongoing relationship, and hopefully a deep relationship with the Almighty. And when we think about it that way, it's pretty critical. So it's 1 hour to get you thinking, but then carry it out of there. Don't just like leave it at the church and then you're about denying people an insurance claim for some selfish reason. It's got to carry through in our lives. And I'm an idiot, knucklehead, a hypocrite, and everything else, but I kind of know what I need to do.
Let me ask you this too, because you're right. It's a relationship and stuff, but most people don't even have that personal encounter with God. They go to church, they punch their card, but you and I both know that what makes it all valuable is when he is in fact friend, companion in the journey of life. I mention all that because was he friend and companion to you before mom and dad were killed? And I guess, and I know from reading previously about this, did you go through a period of shaking your fist in God's face? How does a good God allow really fine people to be killed in this terribly tragic way? And how did you manage anger in that personal relationship
Right.
with Jesus?
Well, look, I started off as an altar boy in the
Yeah.
fourth grade, I think it was. Became a commentator in the
Uh,
ninth grade, which was really interesting. And then graduated, went to Ohio State. And God was kind of a rabbit's foot to me. It was like if I needed something, I'd say, hey, is what I need. And so I can't say that I wasn't connected at one point, but I started, you'll probably find this with a lot of people, they just kind of drift away
mhm.
and you don't really know what it is. So when my parents were killed, I had an Episcopalian young minister come in. And the first thing he said to me, because my father was killed, my mother was going to die the next day. And I was so angry. And he said, well, listen, I know that I don't understand exactly what you're going through, but I know your mother wouldn't come back if she could. And that was an interesting thing. And then the second thing that happened, um, he asked me a few days later where I stood vis-a-vis, my relationship with God. And I had no good answer. And he said, look, you have a window of opportunity. Your pain will subside, but you have a chance to go through there and figure out where you are vis-a-vis the Lord. And he said, but the window will close. So I was in 1987, and I've been through that window. I'm still on the other side of that window, still trying to figure everything out. And so it was a pivotal moment where I began to develop a real relationship. But, like I was telling you now, it's summer now. I'm hanging out. I'm just enjoying myself. And I'm not in the word as much as I should. I read something today about Gideon, just little things, this knucklehead Gideon, right? He just keeps testing God. I got this fleece and make it wet or make it dry. And if I'm going to lead the army of Israel, and I'm reading that and I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking, okay, there's Gideon, there's me. Just those thoughts are good. And last Sunday, I had dinner in Washington with a couple of my friends. One, his name is Tremper Longman. He's one of the greatest Old Testament biblical scholars alive today. And another friend of mine who ran a bunch of programs on Capitol Hill. that involved Bible studies and reflections, and another friend of mine who's in my Bible study here. And so, those are really meaningful, good things to think about and talk about. So these issues bubble up all the time in my mind, and I always try to get them resolved.
Governor John Kasich's our guest. The book I hope our listeners and viewers will get is Heaven Help Us. And it's the story of people just like you and me who've made a difference for the good. The Christophers is an organization I used to work for, and their motto is better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. And this book is all about people who light the candle. I got to ask you too, Governor, because Pope Francis was considered to be someone who might change the rule on celibacy, make it an option for priests. So we go back to the early times of our church when we had both celibate and married priests. I mention that because it didn't happen, but I remember thinking, if it happens, I hope we don't romanticize marriage, because it is, to me, one of the greatest leaps of faith in the world. You made that leap of faith with Karen. I'm just wondering, what did you see in her that made you say, I'm willing to take a chance on building my life with this woman? What did she have?
That was a God thing, to be honest with you. Yeah, she's was tough enough, but kind enough, smart as a whip. And of course, she's very pretty. So all that worked together. And I knew that it was just a matter of time until she gave me the heave ho if I didn't get it. But she never said anything to me about when I was going to decide. But she was really smart about that as well. But there was something else I was gonna comment on. You were saying, where were you on that? You said
We're talking about the option of celibacy and priesthood.
Oh, okay. So I called a friend of mine who used to be a big cheese at Notre Dame.
Mm.
He was a priest, and Father Scully was his name. And I haven't heard from him, but I called him up and I say, tell me about celibacy and marriage and all that. And he said, John, you just don't understand, do you? I said, I guess I don't. He said, well, I'm in love with Jesus.
Mm.
So I never needed anything else. And I told some friends of mine that the other day. I think it's a really interesting thing. And is that how you feel about it? That you're.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But
But people have a hard time understanding that. But I said, I think it's true. They said, well, you would have more priests and everything. And I'm like, well, okay. So times are tough right now.
right.
Aren't they supposed to be tough? I mean, isn't that the way it is? We grind these things out, and it's just kind of the way it works.
But I'd add that you say you're in love with Jesus. That's fine, but I presume St. Peter was in love with Jesus deeply,
And he got married.
he's a married man. And
Yeah.
Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law. Peter had a mother-in-law, he had a wife. So I think you can have both. I think we.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that I'm not. I don't know where they're going to go, and I don't know where this new pope is going to go. I know that I tell you something that's interesting about this new pope. It seems like worldwide people are happy about this.
Yeah.
They think he's a good guy.
Yeah.
And he's kind and he's welcoming, and I think it's a really interesting spark for the world. This have you ever met him?
Well, it's funny to say that 2.5 years ago, we wrote him and said, hey, would you come on our program? And he was just moving from Peru to Rome. And he said, look, I'd love to do your show. Let me get settled first in Rome a little bit. I'll be glad to do your show. And then they go and elected him Pope. So I think I have a letter that says he would do this show. So I think he owes me an interview, John.
I completely agree. I think, he's the kind of a personality who might do it.
Might just do it. I know he's busy, but I hope he finds time. But now you and Karen are also, and this is important in terms of passing on the values that last. You got Emma and you got
Reese.
Yeah, two beautiful young ladies. But I'm just wondering how easy or how hard, because I haven't had the experience of parenting. I'm just a good uncle. How hard is it to pass on the things that you treasure to the kids you love?
Well, I think, first of all, my wife deserves the credit.
Okay.
And, but, my girls were up at Cape Cod. Yes, they were there for a few days. And daughter Reese, they both had their boyfriends there, which is a whole nother story. I don't know where any of that's going. But anyway, they both out of the blue just called me to say, hey, Dad, just wanted to tell you I had a nice time. Love you. I just talked to Emma this morning because I'm going to go to the Cape and the weather's going to be a little iffy. And I don't want to call my wife and ask her what I should wear because she'll just roll her eyes and think I'm stupid. but daughter Emma's now is coaching me on what to put in my suitcase. We have been so fortunate to have these girls the way they are. Never been any trouble as far as I know. But my wife's but they have their struggles in life, but they're both believers.
Yeah, good, good.
And I, of course, tell them about that. I don't shove anything down their throat. That'd be the best way to lose them to this. But they're believers. And daughter Reese will call me up and say, "Hey, Dad, I just found something out that I was reading in I heard in church the other day. I'm so excited about this." I mean, that's really unusual or really gratifying and great. So they're great kids.
That's great. So you give Karen some more credit for.
I don't know how they also went to Christian school, and I think the Christian school though was pretty tough and sometimes too narrow, but they did take some things from it that were really good. I mean, they took something and we've built upon it.
Yes. You mentioned Governor Kasich's our guest. The book is Heaven Help Us. You mentioned before about your parents' ethnic background. I know as an Irish Italian guy what that has given me from my parents. But when you have a Czech background and a Croatian background, what is in there in that culture that you see elements of in who you are?
Very direct.
Okay.
Very direct, sort of like I've gotten a lot more sophisticated. I used to say, well, I don't really like that tie very much. But in the old days, I would say, that's the ugliest tie I've ever seen. Why would you wear that?
Right,
Just very sort of direct, and family oriented and friendly. And, it's like I'm a very happy guy. So I'm pretty spontaneous, and it works out pretty well.
Well, let me be direct with you now, because as I mentioned early before the show, so years ago, Congressman Ray McGrath organized a dinner with you and me at the Capitol Club in Washington. And one of the things I remember all these years later that you said, which I loved, of course, was you said there are some values you negotiate because you have to. There's some values that are not negotiable. And you use specifically the idea of the sanctity of human life. I love that about you, that you've tried to stand with the not just the preborn, but with all life at every stage of life. So in light of that, I'm wondering, my direct question to you would be, you came to a point where you said, I can't go for this guy who's running on the Republican line. I'm going to endorse President Biden. And he's not the same as you on that issue. He's for the 9-month right and paying for it with federal funds. How do you negotiate some values that seem to be almost impossible to negotiate?
Yeah. Well, everything is there's sometimes you get to a line that you can't cross, but most things you can get pretty close to the line with people that are in complete disagreement with you. But let's talk about the Biden thing. Donald Trump is basically a negative populist, and that is a person who says the reason why you don't have something is somebody else took it. I'm a populist myself. But my view about that is if you're having trouble, well, let me try to help you get out of it, or let me understand your problem. There's been such division and increased polarization. Not that it was so easy before, but I've known Joe Biden for a long time, and I really considered that Biden would be somebody who would be a moderating influence, because if there's anything we need in this country today, it's to end the polarization, because we're so much in our own camps that it threatens our ability to achieve very significant things. That's why I went for Biden.
Yeah.
I think that Biden was a great big disappointment to me and the people around him. It was a disgrace the way they propped him up and they didn't let people know. And for that matter, members of the press. But you only have to do what you can do at the time. And, but I really thought Biden would be an antidote, and I turned out to be wrong. He was too partisan because his people, I think, told him what to do and whatever. So, but that's a different issue than all the single issues that are out there. I'm not a single issue person. I never have been. What I look for is character.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has character, I can disagree with them on some things that I feel really strongly about. But if they don't have character, I'm not going to be for them because they happen to agree with me. So there you have it.
We had in our parish a month ago an old friend of yours giving a talk on what his faith means to him. I told him, I don't want politics at church. I want you to talk about what Jesus means to you. And it was Bill O'Reilly. And he said something similar to what you're saying, that he has hopes that we may be coming to a point where we realize the intolerance, the division. It can't go on. It's not.
I don't know if I agree with that, that I as a person can reverse all that. That's why I'm saying it's got to be something that I think is probably spiritual, that is able to motivate people to do better than what we're currently doing. That's what I
I
think.
hope you're right. Last question, I promise, then I'm going to let you go back to work and encourage my listeners and viewers to get Heaven Help Us. But a lot of people have given up that spirit of hope. A lot of guests I've had on the program, I'll say, in light of the divisions and the problems and the wars and even in terms of the name of God, people killing one another, are you still a person of hope? Is John Kasich filled with hope or still doubtful about the possibility?
Oh, no, I'm still very hopeful, because I think that I think that it's inside of people to want to be together. I think there's a notion that we do need to be with other people, but we need something that's gonna create a spark. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it would look like, but I do believe that it's going to take something bigger than all of us to get us back on track.
I want to thank Governor John Kasich for being with us. I want to thank him for writing Heaven Help Us. It's not some kind of book that's saying me, me, me. It's about noticing what other people can do in small and wonderful ways in their community, in their mosque, in their synagogue, in their temple, in their church, to make a difference for the good. And it's exactly the kind of book I believe that can help us transform our world into something far more hopeful. Governor Kasich, thank you.
Monsignor, thank you. I've enjoyed it. You're a class act.
Thanks for being with us on Personally Speaking. If you need to reach me, you can do that at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. You probably listened to this program on SiriusXM, the Catholic channel, 129, but you can also watch the program on YouTube by searching under Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante. We're also on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante and on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Janovich. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.